Hello, I'm Thomas Hare, Chief Content Officer of the Performance-Driven Marketing Institute, a not-for-profit trade association that serves companies in the performance and direct-to-consumer marketing world. It is my honor to welcome you to the 100th episode of Take 20, created by the PDMI's Brand Response Council. Launched on August 5th, 2020, these 20-ish minute live conversations, and they've gotten longer as the years have gone on, featuring leaders in the performance marketing world speaking about the hottest topics in the industry, began as a key part of the association's efforts to keep the fires of professional education and connection burning during the first summer of the COVID-19 pandemic. John Yarrington, the PDMI CEO, and I are thrilled that your response to the series, which comes to you every other Wednesday, has allowed us to reach today's milestone. Thank you so much. Before we get to today's conversation, as always, a housekeeping note, we'll be addressing any questions from the audience at the end of today's session, but you don't have to wait to ask them. Utilize the questions tab on your control panel to type and send your question in. We'll be collecting them and try to get to as many as possible in the final moments of the episode. We absolutely could not reach this point without Brand Response Council Chair and your Take 20 host for the past 4 years, Chris Foster of Modern Postcard. Chris, your leadership here and your incredible ability to guide these conversations so that performance marketers gain crucial industry knowledge every 2 weeks remains invaluable. So thank you, Chris. We really appreciate you. Today, Chris welcomes, we have 5 fellow members of the Brand Response Council. We're hoping to get a 6th one on shortly for a conversation that will touch on one of the biggest business questions of the COVID-19 era and one that extends forward to today. How can we continue to prepare for the unknown unknowns that could create upheaval for our companies and ourselves? Due to late meetings and travel schedule conflicts, 3 of our scheduled speakers are not with us. Jack Barrett of Urban Legend Productions, Maria Kennedy of Allen Media Group, and Sean Robertson of NBCU. We're also trying to get Mark Orton of Kingstar in. Joining Chris right now are Rebecca Barr of RLB Consulting, Doug Bognar of Apex Media, Carey Chase of Modus Direct, Long Ellis of Denali TV, Paul Mosenson of NuSpark Media Group. Team, thanks for being here. Thanks for taking part. Take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Tom, and welcome in everybody for our 100th episode. You know, we started this in during the COVID years, and the first episode was a little bit dramatic. We had a prop where I had a piece of paper and I said, "This is your marketing plan," and we crumbled it up and we threw it away. And we said, "Now what?" And I thought that was pretty apt and appropriate for the time. And one of the things that's happened now over the course of the years is I think that COVID changed how we think about work and how we think about planning, where the habits that we had prior to COVID and maybe the planning cycles, maybe the milestones in the timeline that could be a 2 or 3 year plan or an 18-month plan, those got really condensed really quickly. Right? Suddenly it was a 60-day or a 90-day or even a 30-day plan, right? These planning cycles really change. So I'd love to kind of go around the horn with this first question. And Rebecca, since you're right to my right, I'll start with you. How has your thinking changed since COVID? And have you reverted back to pre-COVID thinking, or is that just gone in the past and you're kind of in post-COVID thinking?
The quick answer is I have not gone back to the past. I don't think you can afford to. Everything is so different. You hit on it with how things have sped up. It's like you have to measure time with your watch and not a calendar now. Everything goes so quickly. So I think it appeals to me in that it's just something, there's like new challenges all the time. I don't know that appeals to everybody, but I think it definitely keeps us on our toes. But yeah, I definitely evolve the way I'm thinking, and I keep looking for ways to evolve it further because every day is not like the day before.
Mm-hmm. Carey, what about you? How has your work and environment changed?
Yeah, it's been a lot of different types of clients. I think the fact that so many people streamed, and so that really accelerated that part of our business. And it also, I think, ignited a lot of clients that we have right now, and that direct to consumer rather than the traditional DRTV, which had an element of direct to consumer, but now we deal with some brands. And I think it's evolved our clients' thinking to Rebecca's point, things are fast and people will get in and get out and are much more flexible. And I think that used to be kind of DR clients were like that. And I think now we see a broader spectrum of clients that kind of take that flexible approach because they just don't know.
Right. I can see that. Long, you're right below her on my Brady Bunch screen. What are your take on that?
COVID hasn't really changed our approach. I mean, I will say this, the COVID years were tough on the TV networks, tough on everyone selling media, right? Because everything kind of shut down to a certain extent. But I think the trend is still consistent in terms of eyeballs migrating from linear TV to connected TV. And even more so maybe with COVID. I guess that's really the takeaway, is that maybe it accelerated the migration because people were binging. And what it's done with linear is just open up a lot more opportunities for performance marketing advertisers because of the rate differential. As the audiences migrate to connected, the unit rates that ultimately you pay in linear have come down, and therefore performance marketing budgets much more competitive. Back in the day, you'd only see performance marketing ads in certain day parts. Now they're everywhere. They're in prime time. So yeah, I think it's accelerated really the migration and boosted the revenue that's being spent in connected. But in some ways, it's helped the performance marketers in linear, which is an interesting dynamic.
Right. All right, Paul, you're next. What about your perspective?
A little bit different, right? Because I do a lot of digital as well. But all I remember about the pandemic was there was this thing called Clubhouse, if anybody remembers that. And I think that, Snapchat got big and Instagram got bigger, and we had TikTok, and I think there's a lot of and mobile got more advanced, I think, newer phones. So I don't know if it's if TV has really changed as much, but I think it's but there's just a lot more competition for your eyeballs, especially during commercials where I'm a little funny. I might say, like, instead of fast forwarding, we just look at our phone, right? So because that whole phone thing, you see it all the time. I think there's a lot more. I know I'm answering it maybe a little different, but still it's about media challenges and channels and how people use their phone a lot more than they did, which is why the QR codes and all those things have gotten a lot bigger too during that period. Was people got used to, like, you go out to dinner, dinner for 8, 4 people, 4 phones, because it's just all part of us, isn't it? Do we all sleep with them? Yes, we do. So
Dinner for 8.
but what I'm saying, it's a little funny, but what I'm saying though, you just gotta, it's consumer behavior, and depending, even older people, right? Quote, but and I think anything it's changed is just consumer behavior, how they use their phone a lot more. They're more addicted to it, and and of course the cord cutting has grown too a lot, as you kind of alluded to. Anyway, I just wanted to just throw those some thoughts out here.
Yeah. So Doug, how's your perspective changed? How are you different? How are you working differently than you did in the past?
Things to Rebecca's point, you can't go back, but I think there is a playbook out there that gives us some idea about what the future should or could be. I think the changes have come much more quickly than I anticipated, and the degradation of traditional pay TV, the pace of that has continued. I thought that would slow down. It hasn't. It has continued. But it sure feels like 1984-ish out there in the streaming world with, what streaming platforms are doing. There's 300 plus platforms out there, and only 6 of them have any audience whatsoever. And it's the big media companies. And they had this brilliant idea last year about, hey, what happens if we put performance advertisers on here? Wouldn't that be awesome and revolutionary? Yeah, it was in '84. So I think that cable playbook to sort of defragmentize audiences is definitely being at least tried out. Will it work? I don't know, but that's the roadmap I'm seeing.
I love it. And Doug, I want to stick with you for a minute. What do you see now? We just came back from PDMI West in sunny San Diego. We're looking now at kind of 100 of these Take 20s where we've covered so many different kinds of topics. I guess I'll ask you first, what are you most excited about and what are you most concerned about moving forward?
Yeah, so I'll answer that a little bit backwards. I'm concerned about the generation that my daughter is a part of, a 19-year-old, college sophomore, and what is her video consumption experience? What does she want? I think the things that excite me are the things I think that kind of resolve that, and it's an immersive experience. I'll be the first AI, I'll say AI, to kind of personalize that experience for folks, for viewers, and make it more communal. She doesn't want to be in the same room necessarily with her friends watching Suits of all pieces of content. But maybe she wants to be on her phone at the same time or through some other technology, having that communal experience with their friends as they watch that episode.
That's interesting. That communal watching where, everyone used to be the family to kind of be in front of the screen, or everyone would see that last episode of Cheers, or everyone would watch the Friends episode at 8 o'clock and talk about it the next day. Your experiences that you described is interesting because you can have a communal experience if a fandom is watching a program and then they're on Twitter or they're on someplace else, all connecting with one another and still sharing this experience. They're just doing it in a different way.
Exactly.
So Mark, Orton, welcome into the Take 20. Glad you're here. I guess I'll toss this to you. The question to Doug was, out of all of the episodes and all the different topics we've covered, what are, now that you kind of assess all these ideas and coming out of PDMI West, what are you most concerned about and what are you most excited about in the future of performance marketing?
Good question. I think one thing I'm a bit, I guess, I wouldn't say concerned, it would be a bit more concerned, excited, maybe being like AI technologies and how we adapt to that moving forward. As we can kind of see is like, AI is here to help us. It's definitely here to make our jobs easier in certain ways, but like, what does it do in terms of like what we want to do in terms of like having bodies in the industry? Are we going to see like AI replace bodies? Are we going to see it being like, hey, now instead of having like some people to help you, do we have AI that's going to replace that? What's AI going to be doing moving forward into terms of like helping us out programmatically, or helping us plan for performances on client campaigns and branding and all that? So it's kind of a bit of like a twofold thing of being like, am I concerned? Am I excited? I don't know what to expect, but it's definitely probably the one I'm like definitely looking forward to seeing what happens in the future with AI, especially.
Fantastic. I love that answer. Carey, what about you? And you can't say AI.
No, I will not. I will try to use no words with A's and I's to make it even more challenging. No, I kind of belong with Doug without saying that word or two initials. I was even thinking before, as we were getting prepared for it, breadth and depth. I find that with like fast channels, there's a huge amount of breadth. Everybody, thousands of channels from which we can advertise. But what has worked consistently well day in and day out for performance linear advertising has been the depth of being able to kind of hit millions of people in one shot and being able to deliver on that. And we have continued, we have found pockets to find it work. Again, kind of Doug saying, there's thousands of out there, 6 are working. But it's still, is this equation going to work for performance marketers, or is it going to be very bespoke and then we have to kind of really crumple up the paper and come up with a new approach? And I think we're at that tipping point in a way of really seeing, is our traditional model working, or do we need to go back to the drawing board and find new ways to make the traditional direct response advertising, not just linear, but working with the new delivery system.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I like that. That's a great answer. Thank you. Rebecca, it's your turn.
Everybody's taking all the good ones, Chris. Okay, so I'm going to weave a few of these together because it's with the initials that we shall not say out loud, and a little bit what Carey said too. So I have things that interest me and then concern me and then excite me again. So with the advent of AI, sorry to say it, it is that really personal, bespoke type of experience. And I think there's some exciting things in that. I think there's challenges for us in terms of reaching them with a more mass reach vehicle like TV type of things. But with that, it's great to have those bespoke experiences, but we've yet to realize, and I feel like it's coming, is like a federally regulated privacy law like GDPR. We have CCPA and there's a few states, but that's coming. And I think what we're going to end up doing is getting back more to contextual things organized, almost the way cable networks are organized too. And it's really by interest. And we saw that on the panel with the FAST channel, talking about FAST channels. Chris, you moderated that. But I think when we get back to that, I think it is going to be more of that playbook that Doug talked about, where we know how to do this and we know how to get to people. The delivery systems are different, but I think there's a lot of approach, and it's going to be back to that high level targeting type of thing. So that's a lot more than you asked, but that's what I'm thinking.
No, that's perfect. I think that generally, when we talked about that, COVID maybe accelerated that push into CTV, and it could be that with the new data technologies that are available, we're accelerating the push into more bespoke, niche-oriented type of marketing, where we talked about in FAST, where there's an opportunity for brands and the content and then the audience to be really neatly aligned and really niche-y in terms of what subculture you're in or what you're interested in. I guess, Long, I'll ask you a separate question. When you talk with other professionals, are you guys sharing the same concerns and enthusiasms, or do you find that everyone's coming at it with a bit of a different perspective?
Yeah, great question. I think when I was at the PDMI West, I ran into a lot of people and these kinds of topics came up. What was predominant, which is interesting, is, and maybe because a lot of the people I spoke to were traditional kind of linear performance marketing people, and then have tried to figure out the new world. But it's the idea that now connected TV and streaming there's so much shelf space. There's unlimited shelf space, which creates unlimited amounts of inventory. There's unlimited programming. There's audience fragmentation, and not only that, but in terms of buying it, there are so many different platforms that you have to cover. Whether it's Apple TV or Samsung or Roku, or it's gotten super complicated. And then you add the controversy about the currency, and then you add the controversy in terms of the bot audiences and what's real, what isn't real. Kind of going back to your original question, there's a lot of concern out there with connected TV, and what's funny is linear TV seems so simple now. It's it's so easy, right? You buy one spot, you get massive distribution, you get massive reach, and I guess long way of saying, I talked to a lot of people who are basically saying, look, linear's not dead. There's going to be this comeback because a lot of advertisers are frustrated that 35% of their budget is going towards a tech tax. I mean, it's gotten crazy, right? Who would have ever thought that that much of a budget would be stolen by the data companies, the DSPs, the SSPs, all the people in the middle, and that's wild when you can actually buy linear and you don't have any of that. So it's kind of harkening back to the old days a little bit, life was so easy. Why can't it be easy? But one more thing is, I think a lot of the pressure, because linear is not going to die, is buying, convergently, right? In a convergent manner where you've got connected, you've got streaming, you've got fast channels, you got all these things going on, and then you have linear that's still the majority of the money. And so, the technology, the process, everything, it's really complex now. I think that's the biggest challenge, is the complexity of the marketplace.
No, I like that. I like that answer. And I also think too that for folks of a certain generation, learning about all that technology is new, instead of kind of natively being brought up into your career through it. Paul, you had mentioned that you do a lot of digital at NuSpark. What are some of the unknowns about the technology and the data that you're trying to prepare for?
Oh, well, it's a lot of guesswork too. I mean, you have to trust the numbers, the third party, if you're talking about like third party, like LiveRamp and all these other audiences that these platforms have, like OTT, you gotta almost trust where the data came from. And sometimes you don't know, it could be old data. Like these people are more likely to, it's like cable addressable TV, right? All it is like, in media, all this is, and if I'm answering the question right, is we're just trying to target as best we can. It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing, right? So, in a way, if you look at it that way, and I mean, even if it's digital's the same way, their digital is battling us now, because once we wanted to get so targeted, and then Google is doing Performance Max, if you know what that is, and Facebook Advantage saying, well, you don't need to be as targeted anymore. We'll handle it all and just trust us, right? Which is something I don't really like, because I'm so used to being hands-on. But no, it's AI doing all this. Like we got this, right? And you can go back, even with TV and everything, is how they do all that. And somebody, one of the Mountain, I think, is putting in keyword targeting and all this and all that. It just everybody's just throwing stuff at us, because all they want to do is give us like we think we know the system. Just trust our data, trust our platform, and then, but if you're going to be performance, you got to have a way to track it, right? And that's always the hard part, is did that work or did this work? And that's really the hard part.
Yeah, so I've got a question for the group. Is the targeting actually getting better? Is the effectiveness of the ad better than it was before? Carey, I'll ask you. I think that when you had real people figuring out, what spots were going to go, which shows, what time to which audience, was that better, comparable, or not as effective as some of the new technologies that quote unquote help you do that?
So I have an interesting approach on all this. I feel like my whole career has been breaking Nielsen, like improving them wrong, be it advertising on stations that they didn't even think existed, or not adhering to traditional targeting approaches where you go where the people are, and making it work through rates. So funny that what Paul was saying, I was on a call yesterday, and it was a Medicare Advantage client, and they were talking about the digital side, and the client was concerned because there were some young people that were getting Facebook ads for Medicare Advantage because of one of their products that you just talked about, that was rolling everything up, that they weren't even able to cut it off at 64 or 65. You had people that were in their 20s and 30s getting Medicare, and you have to pay for those impressions. And so, I love the idea of targeting. It makes such logical sense, but I'm not a convert of that. I'm still a convert of being a little bit broader, kind of taking what Rebecca said, being contextual makes a lot more sense to me than being hyper targeted, especially for the type of business that we do, because at the end of the day, the more narrow I get, the more expensive it is at the end of the day. And it's that is not really, the value is not there for hyper targeting for what we do. I'm sure there are definitely marketers out there that I think it makes sense, but I think that's going to be part of what we do and how we crack the code and how we make it. And it's kind of funny to see people that 3 years ago were always talking about how important it is to be as targeted and to pay for that. And I've always been skeptical of it, and it's nice to be proven a little right.
Not only are you breaking Nielsen, but you're proving everyone else wrong too. I love it.
Well,
If I
let
do
me,
Not sure about that, but fine.
well,
so
you know,
Mark, I've got a question for you. As we talked, Doug mentioned his 19-year-old as a consumer behavior that's different than what we might have had, but she's also going to be entering the workforce in X number of years. My two daughters are 23 and 25. They're into the workforce and they're learning skills. As you look back now, you had to have certain skills as a performance marketer to be successful within the role. And of course, those are changing. So Mark, are you seeing now that there are new skills required for new professionals coming into the space?
Yeah, yeah, as we have so many different ways of just reaching consumers these days, and just like so many different verticals and so many different platforms, so many ways to just track data to target just contextually, it's a lot different than how it was, and just being like having to know like, okay, that's a CPM, that's this is what the rating did, this is what the audience did in terms of like a TV, for instance. Now you're needing to know all the different verticals. You're needing to know like what's a CPA, what are all the acquisition costs, like what are just the different like acronyms, like so many different things now coming into this media landscape, and just so many different, as I was mentioning, like verticals to consume content now, that having yourself, you're going to need a much bigger, broader, just a mindset on like just media in general, and just how things are consumed, from whether it's coming into just straight linear TV to connected TV to radio to digital audio to podcasting to if we're looking into like the big brand awareness out of home, and then getting into social and SEO and all that. There's just so many different ways now to target, and it's kind of like it's very overwhelming. You can't be experts at all of it, obviously. So having like a bit of a scope on the broad sense of it, from outside the box, seeing what clients do and what they need, and examining it. In terms of like overall skills, I think you're just going to have a bit more like openness to be across all levels, in order to kind of like see what you want to do, and what your skill set is best at, and then going from there. Because it's definitely just everything's expanding, and then obviously having a lot of a digital sense from like the programmatic sense, because it feels like it's kind of getting there, that a lot of things are being done that way. So yeah, there's just so many new skills like you're going to have to probably adapt to. Then like when I came into the industry, it was basically just knowing how to do Excel. So
yeah, so I guess Doug, I would ask you on that point, where if these are new skills that this new talent has to have, how do you think the next generation of performance marketing talent is going to change the industry? What are they going to give to the industry that it doesn't have now?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. I think it maybe to me, just because I've been in the business so long, I'm hopeful that the new generation has better insight into behavior, what their generations might be. We're going through an interesting exercise at my firm right now, where we have broken out our entire company into the various, Gen X and boomers, et cetera, and we're all having meetings and talking about touch points of our lives. And then the goal is to all wrap it up and have an idea of how our frame of reference is generated based on these touch points, and see what the difference is across the generations. And I've already, just 2 meetings in, we've had some interesting revelations about whose favorite cartoon. That's a boomer cartoon. That's not a Gen X cartoon. Those sorts of things are interesting to me. So a long-winded answer, but I think their insight into consumption of content, where it happens, the device it happens, the things they like and don't like, or be the biggest insight they'll bring. The nuts and bolts of actual media buying and digital and whatnot. And to Mark's point, you can teach that. I'm more interested in their aspect as a person, and generationally how they interact.
I love it. And as a note, the Take 20, one of the Take 20 series will be generational series. We did the boomers earlier. We're going to be doing these for multiple generations. So, Doug, I'm curious as to some of the, what you will be able to share from your, company's proprietary research. I'm curious about that. Rebecca, I would like to ask you, as As someone who's been, in the industry and, now you have your own agency. And one thing that surprised me at PDMI West and now looking at East is I'm seeing a lot of folks that are still in the industry and they've been in the industry for a long time. I guess this is a goofy question. Does anyone in this industry ever retire?
I've known a few that have, but maybe we can check out and we can never leave. I don't know. But to me, I find it fascinating. It's really interesting now, maybe not interesting in a great way. There's a lot of people, we're all roughly the same age, that are finding themselves on the outside looking in. And I think some of them are maybe not retiring, but they are migrating to other industries out of necessity. But I think there's a core of us that I find it really fascinating. I love all the changes and the agency grind. I really loved that for a long time, but it about ground me into dust. And being on the, working on a project basis now. I remember talking to my financial advisor, and I was like, when can I retire? And she told me all the ins and outs of that. She's like, but you might find that you like it and don't want to retire. And I was like, what kind of crazy talk is that? And now I understand what she meant, though. Like, when you can work with people you want to work with and on projects you want to work on, it's a different perspective. And I think that's why some of us, or some people haven't retired, because they still find it's fulfilling and they enjoy it. I didn't really answer your question, but
no, that does answer the question. And it was, and shamelessly say, it was kind of a leading question because this industry is so interesting and it changes so much and so, so dramatically. So Long, you started your Denali TV X number of years ago. You actually went in and created your own business because you clearly weren't done.
Yeah, I should be on the beach, but I'm not. And my wife keeps asking me why I'm not. But yeah, I just had more to do. I mean, it's interesting. I've kind of aged out of the workforce. Media is pretty young, and I didn't really see anything that I wanted to do other than do my own thing. And so, luckily I had what I think is a pretty good idea, and I'm running with it, and I've got new energy. It gets me up in the morning. It's super exciting. Not much has been done in the linear performance marketing arena in a long, long time. And I'm kind of dovetailing what my experience has been in ad tech, into something now. So my mom lived to be pretty old. I've still got the energy. I'm really excited. And I don't, look, I have other pursuits. Like, it's not like I'm sitting in front of my computer all day, but I do some other things, but it's a nice balance, and I'm not ready to retire, and I look at some people who have retired, and I gotta say, not to be demeaning or anything, but you got to keep your mind going. You really do. And I think whatever stimulation there is, whatever you like to do, you've got to use your mind, and it's good for me. Sure. Yeah, someday I'll be on the beach, but I don't really want to be right now. So that's the difference.
Ready yet. Paul, you're nodding your head with animation. What are you most excited about? What keeps you in the game?
Well, I've always been a giver. I like helping people, I like being with people, whether it's professional or social. And, like I said, things change all the time. There's always something new happening now with AI. Who knew that 2 years ago, right? So, look, I'm just another media buyer, right? So, I mean, it's just, I think everything we do in a business that's always changing, you're either going to be left behind or you're going to take advantage of it and say, I'm going to learn this thing, I think that's a mental thing that everybody should have is to doing that, because like you said, like Long was the same thing was, retiring is sort of like, oh, that's my last step of my life, but, like I could play pickleball half the day, but I prefer not to, I prefer to like keep the brain going, and,
ABC, always be curious.
Yeah, provide something of value. It's a great thing.
Yeah. Well, Thomas, we are rolling up into the 40-minute mark, so it's the double the episode because it's episode 100. And Thomas, as you come in, I do want to do something before we get to the questions, and I just want to raise a glass and toast all of my guests toast Tom and John for PDMI and episode 100. Congratulations, everybody, and on all the guests who've been a part of us, and for all of the listeners and watchers viewing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. All 100 episodes. Amazing. And it keeps on going.
That's right.
Pretty incredible, guys. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, we do have a couple questions to get to before we sign off. And first one being, as the world of performance marketing evolves rapidly, what's driving the development of our industry more, the needs and wants of viewers and customers, or the technological advancement of the ad tech company?
I will chime in if anyone, if you don't mind. I think it's the customers. I think it's the needs and wants of our customers. You know, technology in some ways is a driver, but I think less so in direct response, honestly, because and the number one driver of that is DR is nimble. Performance marketing is nimble and is willing to take a chance, and that makes us almost indispensable in the space.
And I would
Just to
call
go ahead.
out, oops, sorry. Just a quick call out from the panel that we had, that so many of the platforms said they're meeting their customers where they are. And so I think that speaks to what Doug is saying. And, you know, we find a way to address those needs and wants.
Just to add to that, I think as much as we're meeting them where they are, it depends on their rate of adoption of new tech that isn't necessarily the tech that we're dealing with, but they're going to new platforms and new apps and things like that. So, you know, we do have to evolve that way, and we do have to evolve technology, our adoption of technology on our side, but it's just constantly changing. And, you know, I think to Doug's point, like, we're nimble, like we're built that way. So I like our chances.
I guess a question that I would ask, I'm sorry, I want to just jump in real quick. Thomas, I guess I would ask, why can't it be an and? Why does it have to be an or? I think that there's this ambulatory balance of technology and customer behavior, where I think that the phone came first, and then our behavior changed from the phone, and then new apps changed based on our behavior. Streaming came before people knew how to binge, right? So I think that there is this beautiful interplay between technology and customer needs. And it's kind of like the old adage where if, you know, people used to think that they wanted a faster horse until Ford put a car in front of them, right? So the idea is you don't quite know what you want until you see it in front of you. I'll just posit that.
Thanks,
I would say just briefly that the attribution modeling has gotten so much more sophisticated, if you want to call that technology. And what Carey was saying earlier about contextual relevance, you know, a lot of what's happened in the digital space, connected TV, has gotten away from context, right? You know, the trade desk doesn't care about context. They just want, you know, to run the volume. But contextual relevance is hugely important to ad performance. And when it comes to performance marketing, you want the product to be contextual relevant. Of course, you want the right people. But I think that's kind of the data race right now is really how good the modeling can be, you know, the attribution modeling and how sophisticated. And I talked to an agency the other day who's breaking the day parts down into quarter hours in terms of performance differentials. So I think that has helped actually the consumer because, hey, the more relevant the ad, the more effective it's going to be, the better the user experience.
Great. Let's get this last one out there. And I think this one comes from the fact that we were describing this as a conversation that kind of started with the unknown unknowns. So I think the question is about known unknowns, the things that we've faced in the past that we just don't know when they're going to happen again. Recession, pandemic, supply chain, inflation, a technological change. Is there one possible known unknown that you spent more time preparing for than any other? You stumped the crowd.
Yeah.
Say that again. What was the question?
With the known unknowns that you're preparing for, I think that AI is a big unknown, but everybody knows about it. And I think that it was interesting, the panel at Miami, when Blue Water did their presentation on AI doing multilingual ads, the CEO of Blue Water was really interesting and very definitive. And he said, his story was, I told my team, you've got 30 days to come up with your AI plan, or you need to look for another position, because he was that adamant about injecting that into the business. And I think that is the largest known unknown in almost every aspect of marketing.
Well, can I answer?
Yep.
It's a good answer. Let me just say this to your point, Chris. It goes back to consumer behavior, if you ask me, like even with B2B marketing and everything we do. But I guess the answer is, will people persuade to perform an action knowing a creative is AI versus non-AI? Does it really matter if the offers? I mean, that's really the big picture question. And do I even care that I'm going to act on something or not? It might be more memorable, and maybe the branding goes up, right? So I don't say I have the right answer to that. I'm just saying it's just a consideration about consumer acceptance regarding this kind of creative.
Right.
All right. Unless anyone else wants to jump in, I will say thank you to all of our panelists today. Thank you to every panelist that we've had over 4 years. Everyone who's taken their time out of their day to come on here and share their wisdom, share their thoughts, without the worry that someone's going to pick it up and run with it and steal it from them. To be that open with what your thoughts are on topic is admirable. So thank you to all of you here today, and all of you who have joined us, and all of you who will join us in the future. So on we go. Our next episode of Take 20 is set for Wednesday, October 30th, when we'll dive into the state of shoppable TV in a space for technology platforms and hardware changing the game. So kind of an extension of a conversation, or a few conversations that happened at PDMI West. Please visit thepdmi.com/take-20 to register for the webinar and check out the upcoming schedule. And I'd like to let you know that online registration for PDMI East, the association's spring 2025 event at Eden Rock Mine Beach, is open now through November 29th. Our early bird special pricing means badges are priced at just $295 for PDMI members, $495 for non-members. That's a $100 discount from our usual online pre-registration prices. And when you get your badge for the event, which is going to take place April 7th through 9th, you'll also immediately receive the link to book your discounted room at the host hotel. Visit thepdmi.com/pdmi-east to get your badge and hotel room now. Thank you all for being here. Thank you everyone for speaking, for joining us, listening in. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.